So I've tried to make this video for several times to no avail. So I'm going to try this last time. So this dream is about, so I'm doing a translation on a dream that I was asked about in Spanish, okay? So the dream is very, very interesting, as they all are, and they have to do with testicles, this one. You know, it is what it is, okay? So there's a lot of questions about testicles, so which is merited, okay? It's a, you know, it's a big part of our life. For both males and females, okay, and so, you know, so it's very interesting, and it would be very proper for us to, you know, sort of dream that, right? Anyway, so this is a gentleman that dreamed in his adolescence a recurring dream, and in a recurring dream, and I've mentioned this before, that's how I started in dream interpretation. I had a recurring dream, and I'm not going to go into that recurring dream because I've already mentioned it several times, and I don't want to take more time up in this video that I've had a really hard time creating. So anyway, so a recurring dream is things that you have that are unresolved, and that, you know, the recurring dream will go away when you have resolved it. So if you have a recurring dream year after year after year, you haven't resolved it, okay? And I guess I'll mention it. So that's the way I started with dream interpretation. I used to have a recurring dream that I was in the desert with my children going home, and my husband was never there. And then I divorced, and I stopped having the dream. That's what triggered me, and that's what made me very curious about what it was and what was the difference about my life that I stopped having that dream. It took me a while to figure it out. So really what it represented was, it represented my relationship, my marriage, that was very, very difficult, okay? And it also prophesized, right? It was a prophecy that I would eventually be heading home, maybe not physically, although I did go back home, but spiritually as well, and in being, right? So it sort of foretold, but not, right? Because maybe it foretold it because it was the actions that I took, because should I had not gotten divorced, I would have probably still be dreaming it. So it was the action that I took in divorcing that created the ending of this dream, but the dreaming of itself was telling me that I was in a relationship that was very hard, and it was desert, right? I live in the desert, so it's drought. It's, you know, it was a hard trek. I was always very exhausted. And so when I stopped having the dream, is when I divorced. So I got rid of whatever it is that was very trying and difficult in my life. And the reason that my children were with me was because I was divorcing my husband, okay? And so it's very interesting. So it sort of prophesized, but it also indicated and gave me an insight of what my life was, because I was going through this really hard relationship, and you know it's hard, but you don't know it's like devastating hard, right? You're in the desert and whatever. So recurring dreams are issues that you have, that you are going through in your waking life, that you have not had resolution on, okay? So this gentleman had a recurring dream as when he was an adolescent, and the recurring dream is this, okay? But it has two endings that were always different, and two finalities, okay? So I'm going to tell you one, and then I'm going to tell you the other. So he is being castrated by 4 faceless women in the bathroom, but he is very calm while they're doing it, and he says that with the most passivity, right, and the most calmness of his being, he was watching them castrate them, take one testicle out and then the other one, and that he was just really calm. Initially, I thought that they, you know, that these were women and these were relatives that sort of took care of him, okay? But I was very reluctant to upload the video because I didn't think it made any sense, because for me the dreams don't make any sense because I'm not living it. So I just sort of say what it is, and you guys are the ones that understand it. So what happened in one of the endings is that he wakes up in his bedroom, and on his dresser he has a jar labeled "Toma tus huevos," which means "here are your nuts," or, you know, "here are your balls." That's the correct you know, translation. Here are your balls, right? In a label in a jar on top of the dresser, okay, in his bedroom. The other ending is that he wakes up again and he sees the jar with his testicles, but they don't have a label, and they're floating, and he wakes up in the hospital with a nurse, okay? So initially I thought they were relatives and it was somebody important in his life, like his mother and possibly aunts and stuff like that. But later, as I was uploading and doing the video, it came to me, because that's the way I work, right? I'm divinely guided. And I've researched a lot and all sorts of stuff, and I've educated myself on it. So anyway, so the first dream is that he had in his adolescence, he lost his virginity, okay? And he probably had 4 women that he was involved with sexually. The faceless women is exactly that. The women don't matter in of itself, because it doesn't matter about the women. What mattered and what the symbolism of it was about his sexuality and his virginity and him losing it. So they sort of take one out and then they take another, and he's very passive there, like, you know, sort of like enjoying it, or not enjoying it, but passive. And so he wakes up in his bedroom, which is a safe place, which is where you have intimacy, where it is that you rest, and the jar is labeled toma tus huevos. So they give him back his testicles, right? They give him back his nuts. Here are your nuts, or here are your balls, or here your, you know, I don't know the proper terminology. So so he didn't lose them, you know, he gets them back and they're there. Okay, so that's one of them. The other one is that the other ending is that he has the same jar and the testicles are floating, but he wakes up in a hospital with a nurse. So there is an amorous relationship that he had that needed to be healing, because his testicles, and obviously they were sexual as well, his intimacy with this amorous person was there, and they were sexual, okay, together. And so because they were in water and they were floating, I assume, I don't know that he said that they were floating, I assume that it was water, okay. And so you know, so it was a relationship that had to be healed, because obviously there was some damage to it, you know, amorously. I don't see it as in terms of sexually, but that sexuality was involved in it. The other one is that the other interpretation of the second ending to the dream is that he could have been in sports and gotten kicked or gotten hurt in his testicles somehow, and he healed that as well. So I think it's a combination of all of them, and I think that that's why it was different endings. Oh, I didn't mention this in my Spanish video. That's why it was different endings for the dream, because it was complex and it wasn't just one specific thing that had to do with that. So it was very, very interesting. And for the first time, which is very interesting, right? The testicles in of himself, as they represented it in the dream, were not necessarily about being hurt or you know, hurt physically or hurt internally, but really about of coming of age. It was a beautiful dream. Namaste, love and light.